story goes, I was on Facebook and I was watching a reel or something, and something in that reel reminded me of my son or something about my son,
Hmm.
and it hit me like a big rig. And
Sometimes the greatest teachers in our lives are the ones we lose too soon. Today's guest, Jason Tuttle, is a husband, father, and grief advocate whose life was forever changed on January 28th, 2022, when his 15-year-old son, Zachary, who had multiple special needs, passed away unexpectedly. In the days after that devastating loss, Jason did something remarkable. He began writing. What started as personal reflections became letters to Zachary, a website, blog, and community where Jason shares his raw, honest journey of grief from a father's perspective. It's grown into a space where men feel safe enough to feel vulnerable and where women are empowered to better understand the men in their lives grieving, and where all who are walking through grief are reminded you are not alone. Jason, welcome to Positive Vibes. We're so glad to have you here.
well, thank you so much for having me.
No, you're welcome. So, Jason, can you share a little about Zachary and the joy he brought to your family?
Certainly, as you stated in the intro, he was born with a lot of different medical special needs, but even though he was born with what a lot of us would be considered a hard kind of medical life. He was always very laid back. He was always very
Mm,
happy. Nothing ever really bothered him.
yeah.
He loved people. In fact, he definitely loved women, and he had a hierarchy of women. Uh, f- uh, so it was blonde haired, brown haired, brunette, black, and then redhead in that order. That he never met a stranger.
Mm. He sounded like quite a character,
Uh,
Zachary. Yeah. So,
certainly.
yeah. So, what was life like as a stay-at-home dad for 12 years, walking alongside of your children with unique needs?
Well, to kind of backtrack just a small little bit,
Yeah.
I got married to my wife when I was 26. She was 29. So we weren't necessarily older per se, but we were older than the average that get kind of gets married where I'm at. And we knew that once we got married, we were pretty much going to go into having kids at that point because we
Hmm.
both wanted kids, and it was just
Yeah.
like, let's kind of get the show on the road. So we did, and I'll never forget it. We find out we're pregnant with what would have been my son, and my wife says we're in the kitchen, and she goes, "Well, what if we have a child that's got some needs or medical needs?"
Mm,
And I said, "Well, if we do, then we'll just have a child with needs. We'll just deal with it as
mm,
it comes." And from that point forward, I can joke now, but apparently God heard us because He
yeah.
graced us with two of them.
Ah,
And so initially, I wasn't a stay-at-home parent. We knew from about that week 20 appointment on that there was going to be a lot of issues. We knew that everything was going to be changing. We knew that this was going to be kind of a world that we had no idea about with all the medical doctors and hospital
mm,
stays and everything associated with it. So for the first year or two, I think it was two, I still worked because my degree's in education, so I taught at the time.
yeah.
And it just got to a point in my last year in teaching that I was in and out of the hospital so much that I finally just I had to leave because
Mm,
I burned through all the time I had and I was essentially working for free at that point.
yeah.
And so I get into being a stay-at-home parent, and um, it's a lot of trial and error, to be
Mm,
honest with you, because some of the issues my son had, as well as his sister, were pretty common issues, but they were still hard medical issues. And then my
mm,
son was born with a rare condition, which nobody in 1,000 miles around me really understood. So that was the hardest part. But, you know, being a stay-at-home parent for me was doing the routines. I did all the physical medical care. I did all the physical lifting. I did,
Mm,
the consistent doctor's appointments because at a certain point, I had six specialist doctors for both kids that I
wow.
had to see every 6 months.
Mm,
So I was constantly back and forth to the doctors. And then between my two, my son was more medically fragile. So he was the one that was always in and out of the hospital.
yeah.
And every time we got admitted, we were there 7 to 10 days every single time. And so that's kind of the basis of what a lot of my like staying at home was around.
Yeah, it's yeah, a full-time will be more than a full-time job from what you've described there. But in regards to your special needs children, I'm a true believer about special children go to special parents. So I think what you said about God choosing you, I think yeah, they got the good match there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jason, can you take us back to the day of Zachary's passing? What did
Hmm.
that moment change in you?
Um, well, in the heat of the moment,
Mm,
um, it was just kind of a blur. It was a
mm,
shock. All of the issues that my son had were considered chronic and not terminal.
mm,
Um, I always knew in the back of my brain that there was a small possibility of them affecting him to the point of what happened,
yeah.
but it was never a real big concern. It was more enough to know, hey, this is a possibility. We need to kind of keep an eye out for it.
Mm,
And as a man in the middle of that moment, I had to compartmentalize because I was there in the ER when they were trying to save us. I watched start to finish, I watched it. And so in that moment, I had to compartmentalize because I had to get the information out to his mother and the grandparents and I later told him I said if I were just sobbing and blubbering and all that I said I wouldn't have been able to get it out to you. Now
mm,
later it affected me down the road, but when I finally got to a point where it hit me, I mean it like I doubled over. It was
mm,
just the rush of everything. And my relationship with my son versus his mother's it's not good or bad. It was just different. I had a
mm,
much different relationship because I did all the medical care. I was always in the hospital. I mean,
yeah.
we were one on one 24/7,
Mm,
365. And so to go from doing this very structured everything every day kind of thing and having the relationships we did to nothing, I mean, it was crushing
mm,
is what it was.
yeah. I'm sure people out there again are trying to understand what it was like for you to be there to watch your son while in the hospital while he was passing. And again,
Mm,
until you're in that moment, you just don't know how you could react. And for you to do what you did and still converse with your wife about what's happening, that just shows the courage and strength that you have and support for Zachary at the time. So that's just truly amazing what you did at that time. But you said that you doubled over in
hmm
absolute grief after it all. In the
hmm
wake of your loss, in that
hmm
moment or around when you were in despair, what inspired you to start writing letters to Zachary?
Well, I'm a big proponent of therapy or counseling. I've gone to
Mm,
it on and off for several years. I believe we all go through kind of seasons where we may need someone else with a different set of eyes to kind of look at what we're dealing with, just because I can't see outside of myself. And the irony of the counseling was literally 2 weeks before my son actually passed, I literally called her up and said, hey, I think we're through this season. I think I'm gonna stop seeing you for a while. When I need it, I'll set up a time should I need to start seeing you again. Great,
mhm,
wonderful. And then after everything happened, I immediately called her up and said, "Hey, I need an emergency session." I said, I don't really want to explain it over the phone. I said, "You'll understand when I get in your office."
Yeah.
And so we did. And so at that point, I was seeing her once a week, and probably about 6 weeks in, I wanted to say, towards the end of one of the sessions, she goes, "Have you ever thought about journaling?" And the irony of her asking me that question based on what I'm doing now, my
Mm,
response was, I don't know how really good I am at writing. I don't know if that's my thing, if you will. And
mm,
so she goes, "Well, it's more of a mindfulness activity. You can put it on the back burner. You don't have to share it with anybody. You don't, you can write it and delete it, write it and burn it, whatever you want to do. It's more just to get it off of you." I
yeah.
said, "Okay." So even after that point, it probably sat on my mental back burner for probably 9 months after that. I
Hmm.
resisted it to the hilt.
Yeah.
And then one day, as the story goes, I was on Facebook and I was watching a reel or something, and something in that reel reminded me of my son or something about my son,
Mm,
and it hit me like a big rig, and I doubled over and on my
mm,
couch. And it was at that point I opened up a Word document in proper letter form. I just started writing. My son kind of spewed words out on a page. And I did that several times a day for a while. And in between all of this, I was a part of a Facebook group because we all know Facebook has groups for everything.
mm,
I was in there and I got to know the female admin very well. And I said, "Hey, do you mind if I post a journal entry?" And she goes, "Sure, we'd love for you to, because we rarely, if ever, get men in here willing to open up to,
mm,
share." And so I went to go copy and paste it. And right before I hit send, I thought, as noble as this may be to those that are reading it, am I ready to post this on the internet? Because let's face
mm,
it, it's still the internet. And am I going to be able to handle negative comments should I get
yeah.
them? Because at that point, I think I was 9 months removed. And so I was still very raw with it. And I didn't want to jump down someone's throat because they just disagreed with me.
Mm,
So I still posted it, but I kind of put a disclaimer with it and said, "Hey, this is my raw, kind of open, unfiltered, meaning if I'm writing this and if I feel like I need to write some expletives in there because that's how I'm feeling in the moment, that's how I'm
mm,
writing it." And I said, "If this isn't your thing, that's fine. Just
mm,
scroll on." And I did it that morning and waited most of the day. And then that evening, I started getting response after response. And I thought, here we go. Let's see what's
mm,
going on. And literally every response was massively positive. I
mm,
had a woman that reached out to me that said, "We've never met each other. We don't know each other. I've never told you anything about my situation. I've never told anybody about my situation, but I just read your letter to your
mm,
son." And she said, "It is exactly how I feel, word for word to the core." And she goes, "Nobody has ever expressed this the way you have." And I said, "I appreciate it. I'm glad it resonates with you. It's inspired by my son. And, I'm glad I can be someone that you feel like understands what you're going through." And
mm,
it was because of that first comment is the reason why I proceeded on. If I hadn't have gotten that first comment, who
mm.
knows if I'd even be here today.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, and it's such a act of kindness for you to share something so raw and vulnerable in such a public space. And as you
Mm-hmm.
said, if you didn't get that first feedback, you probably may not be where you are today. So it was really a gift that someone gave back to you. So
Mm-hmm.
how's that community grown into something that not just helps you, but others?
Um, well, it comes from the point that my son passed until I was finally at a point where I started really kind of creating, if you will. It was probably a year and a half. I mean, it was a
Mm,
pretty intense year and a half. And then I just personally got to a point I knew I was would forever grieve, and I knew I would still have the difficult moments, but I thought I need to create a legacy somehow for my son that is not
Mm,
just his, because up until this point, most of his legacy was all of his medical stuff, all of his hospital
mm,
stays, and I was just, it kind of comes out of from when I had to write the obituary for my son, and they give you like 3 paragraphs to explain
mm,
his whole life, and I will say in that moment I was angry writing it because I was just like, how can you put someone's whole life into
mm,
3 paragraphs? And so, and kind of an underlying theme in it, it was I want to do something that's more positive in my son's
mm.
name versus just what he's lived through. And
Yeah,
so that's initially why I started. It was I want something that will outlive me that I'm doing in his name.
yeah.
And so that's kind of where that came from. And I initially began reaching out to just men because I could never find any other men.
Mm,
I wanted to find men, maybe not exactly like what I was doing because I had a very unique situation, but at least kind of in the arena, if you will.
yeah.
Um, so that we had some common ground. And so I reached out to them, and then after doing that a while, I thought, well, I really want to open this up and kind of grow this. So I started
Mm,
opening it up to, it went from just men to people that had lost children, and then people had
yeah,
lost spouses, and
yeah,
towards the end, it's going to sound crazy this way, but towards the end, I kind of opened it up to women.
yeah.
And the reason why I say it that way is because men typically are more open when they're around just men versus a mixed group. Uh,
Mm,
and so when I opened it up to women, it was one, yes, you can come share your grief. I'm more than happy for you to do that, but this is for
mm,
you because at this point I was starting to get women. Well, we lost our child on this day, and it's been X number of months, and my husband's not opening up. What can I do
yeah,
to get him to open up? And it was one of those things. I had a light bulb moment where I go, well, what could a man tell his wife or significant other? Maybe not to get them open up, but to set the stage to make it easier for him to open up.
yeah.
And so that's where it comes into the women that ask me, I go,
Mm,
in fact, I created what I call the male grief commandments that are just like 10 commandments, if you will, to say, will this exactly help them to open up every time? Yes or no, but it will
mm,
certainly set the stage to make them feel that they can be vulnerable enough to open up when they want to.
mm.
And so
Yeah.
it it was a positive way to give back, and ultimately through this, from what my wife has told me, it's been kind of a healing journey on my end, even though
Mm,
I haven't seen it in the moment, to be able to help others in the name of my son.
yeah. And it's a beautiful legacy that you've done for your son, Zachary, in starting this. So, just further on what you're talking about, men openly speaking, why do you think, um, or can you talk about the societal hurdles men face when grieving? Why do you think they struggle to express grief?
Well, a lot of it comes from the societal issues, but a
Mm,
lot of a lot of it's also kind of a generational thing.
mm,
I'm almost 49 years old. I'm considered Generation X.
mm,
Um, I always laugh and tell people we're kind of the rub some dirt on it, walk it off
yeah.
generation. We're the you're crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about generation, that. And I was always taught, I mean, I could be emotional, but I was always taught that if I was, it needed to be short and to the point. It didn't need to be public. It needed to be,
Mm,
work gives you 3 days off for bereavement. After that third day, you've got to, no matter what's going on, you've got to, you know,
mm,
get through that and go back to work. Because what good is a man if he's not a productive man?
mm,
Because of what I can physically produce, and if I'm sitting here and in an emotional wreck over here, I'm not producing anything.
mm,
And so that's some of that from kind of society. The other issue, which I've heard from a lot of men, especially here in the States, is why do I want to open up if I know at some point when, say, me and my significant other might get into an argument, she's just going to bring it back, weaponize it, and throw it in my face,
Mm.
even though we've gone over this and um, she says we're beyond this. We've agreed that we're beyond this, but she finds a moment to take a jab, and so she pulls this out and throws it at me. Um, the last thing would be, and typically when I say this, when I'm talking to women specifically, I'll say, look, now when I say this, this is not a personal attack. It's
Mm.
not directed specifically at you. This is just kind of what I've heard through a lot of different people. And the number one thing I typically will tell women is if you're going to listen, listen to listen and not listen to respond.
Mm.
Let the man get it out. If you're waiting for that one moment for him to take a breath and then you take what he's given you, flip it around about how it hurts you and you throw it back at him, all that's teaching that man is that his emotions don't matter. They will always be secondary. And why am I sharing them to you? Um, each side has their
Mm.
emotional points to it, and
Yeah.
and I'm not discounting that. However, um, if the female side of the relational equation is, I want you to listen to everything I have to say because I want to vent and get it out, and
Mm.
then we can talk, and I don't want you to fix it, then you have to be willing to do the same thing for the male side
Yeah.
of the equation. That's what balances it out.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest difference that we have there as to why men won't open up.
Mm. I love what you said there. They're very wise words. Listen to listen, not listen to respond. That's very wise words there. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners out there will be taking that on. So, just on your own journey,
Hmm.
um, what taught you about the importance of vulnerability?
Yeah. I think well, because I do all this, I'm definitely more open
Mm.
about it. Um, I've always been a little more emotionally vulnerable, if you will. I've never had a problem expressing myself,
Mm.
whether it's been through grief or just I was always known at you always have that one friend that nobody else will say. There's always that one friend that will say the one thing that nobody else is willing to say.
Yeah.
I was always that person. I was never rude about it, but I never held back either, you
Mm.
know, and, and so I tell specifically men a lot, it takes more strength to be open about something than it does to hide from it
Yeah.
because when you open up, you have, from a male's point of view, when you open up, you have to factor in all of the different nuances of those around you that may come at you once you've opened up.
Yeah.
So in reality, it takes more strength to open up because you know what's coming
Mm.
versus to hide it however you're hiding it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you hope your work empowers both men and women when it comes to supporting grief?
Well, I think in the Western world that we don't do death, dying, grief, mourning very well at all.
No.
Depending on one's religious and cultural beliefs, there are a lot of other cultures that do in my opinion, a much better job on celebrating a person's life and dealing with death and, being just open about it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's part of it. I think, um, TV and movies and what we see, they do an okay job about it. Do they do a real adequate or what I would think a great job about describing what dealing with death and dying really is? I think there's something to be desired there.
Hmm.
Um, um, with the work that I do, I'm trying to make it so that You, even I've dealt with this. When you have someone pass in your family, especially a child, people just don't know what to say to you.
Yeah.
They feel like they're forced to say something that's socially acceptable, that, I've got to at least show that I care whether I do or I don't.
Mm.
And it typically comes off awkward, and
Mm.
it um, a lot of times from a lot of people I've heard comes off almost offensive, and just the things that they say to him. So I'm here to say, hey, look, if you want pointers and all that, I can give you all that, but at the end of the day, you just got to come up to us like normal people. Yeah, we've dealt with devastating loss.
Mm.
Yeah. I tell them, I go, newsflash, nobody gets out of this life alive, and death is
Mm.
batting 1,000 from all of eternity. So
Yeah.
you're gonna deal with this at some point. So I'm trying to show from my point of view that even though it's tough and it hurts and all that, it doesn't have to be that awkward. You don't necessarily have to say something that you're not sure of what to say. You
Mm.
know, a lot of grievers, they just, even if you come and just sit with them as they're
Mm.
emotional, that's what a lot of grievers want. You don't have to
Mm.
say anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the simplistic way of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. It's really just holding the space for that person just sitting there or just that touch,
Hmm.
to know that they're being cared for and that they're thought of at that time. So, Jason, can you share a moment from your community that showed you Zachary's story is helping heal others?
Um, I it's not one specific, but it's a lot of
Mm.
little things. It's
Yeah.
like um the content that I make is, letters. I will share other people's content, kind of give my commentary from just a father's perspective. I'll do short form videos, I'll do memes. So it's in a lot of
Mm.
different ways, but a lot of it comes from the comments I get from the followers when I write something heartfelt about my son, or,
Yeah.
just within the last week, I've had a couple of short posts of, I was doing all right for the longest time, and it just seems like this last week my emotions are just all over the place, and the
Mm.
littlest things are catching my
Yeah.
attention. And so it's, his impact is the responses I'm getting from that.
Mm.
I feel the same way too, and X, Y, and Z is going on, or I completely understand, and this is how I'm doing, and so that's kind of the impact. Just the little things, one comment at a time, is kind of showing me how this is just filtering through the community that I have.
Yeah. Yeah. And just on your writing, what role does storytelling play in in processing grief?
Um, I have always been someone that when I can think about what I'm going to say, I'm much better at describing it and explaining it to folks. And writing, at least for me, gives me a chance to kind of really articulate what I want to say to people, especially if I'm trying
Mm.
to paint a graphic picture, if you will,
Yeah.
to them of just what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And the most common response I get from people from my writing is they really like the analogies that I give them. Meaning,
Mm.
I've had multiple people say you have an interesting knack for taking very difficult topics and making them simplistic enough
Mm.
for people to understand. And I said, well, some of that may be me, but a lot of it's, I taught in an elementary school, so my thinking is if I can get you to understand it almost like a kindergartner would, then anybody can
Mm.
understand it. And so
Yeah.
that that's another big point of kind of what my writing has done to help me as well as help others.
Mm. And just on that, how has sharing your journey helped you keep Zachary's memory alive?
Um, it's definitely been very cathartic,
Mm.
but it's more because I don't do it all day every day, but every day when I get on here looking at my websites and all the stuff associated
Mm.
with it, I'm thinking about him literally every day since the
Yeah.
day he passed. And so, and then that comes out either bluntly or, subtly in what the content in which I create.
Mm. And just on that, are you able to share a memory of Zachary that always makes you smile?
Sure. My son, so in the shortest way to explain it, my son was nonverbal.
Mm,
Had severe neurological delays. So when he passed at 15, he was probably functioning about 8 years old. He was epileptic, he had seizures, and he had a rare condition.
hmm.
And my son always even though he couldn't tell time, he had weirdly specific and perfect comedic timing. And I
Mm.
never could understand how he did it. Like I would say just something silly or stupid, and he would know the exact right time to laugh at it. Whether he meant it or not, I'll never know. But like he knew the exact moment which he should interject whatever his response was. And I'd look at him and go, buddy, you don't know how to tell time. How can you tell time when you need to laugh at something? And so he was always kind of goofy and like to goof off. And
Mm.
we would sit and watch sports. And when the team I was watching would score, he'd know the exact right moment to kind of clap or have a
Yeah.
response. And I'd still look at him and go, buddy, I don't know how you're doing that because I don't know how you've got the timing because I don't know if you can tell time.
Yeah. I'm sure he had an infectious laugh as well that got
He,
everyone laughing in the room with him.
he did.
Yeah. And on those tough days to get through, did you have a quote or a phrase that you went to just to pick you up?
I actually created one that I use all the
Oh.
time, and I tell people, grief is a life. Yes, grief happens right after you lose the loved one, but the reality is grief is a lifelong process. You'll never
Mm,
get out of it. You'll never finish it. And there's no end game. The only end game would be is when you, the person, passes yourself, is the
mm,
end game of grief for someone else. But the quote I always tell people is, though I strive for the mountaintop, it is the valley in which I live.
mm,
And what I mean by that is all of us in life, depending on whatever situation we're in, we all want to be at the summit of the mountain, looking over the beautiful landscape and having the grand time, relishing our accomplishment. But the reality is the majority of the time we're in the valley.
mm,
We're dealing with the hard times. We're dealing with the training. We're dealing with the things that get us ready to be able to make that climb time and time
yeah.
again. And that's kind of what grief is. You have your times in your valleys when you're having your moments and you're, crying and sobbing and all that, and you start getting out of them to where you have kind of an upswing to get to the top and you're remembering the happy memories and the happy grief, if you will. And
Mm,
then at some point, it's coming to an end and you're going back down that hill and you got to do it all over again. And so
mm,
that's typically what I'll tell people.
mm. Yeah, nice quote. Yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, analogy with that.
Mm.
So, Jason, where can people find letters to Zachary and connect with your community?
Well, I have my own website. It's called letterstozachary.com, and
Mhm.
Zachary is spelled Zachary because there's another
Yeah,
spelling for it.
yeah.
Um, my original first page of the same name is on Facebook.
Hmm.
Um, I also have an Instagram page, and as have joked with a lot of other people, I never thought at 48, 49 years old I'd have a TikTok page, but here we are. Um, and honestly, I've grown to enjoy the Tik because at TikTok I can do short form video, and with my
Yeah,
ADHD brain, that just does wonders.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I have the website.
Wonderful. I'm sure some of our listeners will be looking out for you. And for
Thank
a
you.
father or mother listening right now who feels buried under the grief, what would you want them to hear?
Well, I'm a realist about things, and I will typically tell people, you may not hear from other people, but I'll tell you, grief is horrible. It sucks,
Mm,
but it's one of those things that no matter how small of a direction that you move forward, you are still moving forward.
mm,
It may be a millimeter at a time, but if you continue to keep making those millimeters at a time, at a certain point, you're going to look back and realize how far you've actually come. And so even though you think you won't get through it, you will. You'll still have your tough days, but you'll still get through it. And then on the other side of the initial grief, yeah, you'll have difficult times, but over time, the frequency in which those difficult times will get a little bit farther apart and a little bit farther apart, uh, to where they'll become a little more manageable versus just all at
Mm.
once.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jason. And thank you for sharing your story and
Thank you.
reminding us that even the deepest grief, love can still shine through.
Mhm.
Your courage to write, your courage to share, and to invite others into your healing journey has turned your pain into a purpose. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
To everyone listening, grief may change us, but it does not end us. Through connection, compassion, and courage, we can carry our loved ones forward while we still are choosing life. This is Positive Vibes with Nicki Dennis. Until next time, may you honour your stories, hold space for your healing, and remember that love never ends. Send in your love and positive vibes. Bye for now. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Yeah,
Thank you.
that was lovely. Thank you.